Michael's here.
There he is.
Grab a chair.
Right
Or you
here.
can sit on the floor.
Next
You can
to
sit
Mr.
next to Bill.
Or
I'm sitting on the floor.
Or sit in the, we're back here.
Recliner, yeah.
If you don't want to be that close.
Yeah,
Or you
Sure.
can sit outside and look through the window.
You're in top.
Not the dog spot.
Okay. Well, can I pray? Because I'm just,
Absolutely.
worked up here. Father, thank you for the opportunity to share my life story with my friends. Father, would you make it about you and just calm my heart? Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, first of all, we talked a little bit about outside. I was born in Red Bluff, and my mom and daddy are Ray and Dorothy Reed. Ray, some of you know, I was named from my mama and my daddy. My daddy's name is Ray, and my mama's middle name is May, and so they put them together and got May Ray, or
Wow.
Ray. I've always been thankful I wasn't born earlier, because they said it was because I was also born in May. So if I'd have been born in April, I might have been like April. That would have been awful. Or if they'd used my mama's first name instead of her middle name, I might have been Dore, or I don't know, something awful. So I've just always been really thankful. I am the third of 4 daughters, and I went to church. So here's Red Bluff. I went to church my entire life, every Sunday, my entire life, with my mother and my sisters. I learned every Bible story. I learned every children's song. I learned it all. It was a Presbyterian church. I brought show and tell too, so this
Excellent.
box is back here. This is a picture of the church I grew up in, and it has, you don't have to read it, but it has a little history of the church on the back. It began in 1860, so it was really an old traditional church. That was home for me. I learned everything there. I went to Vacation Bible School. I knew that God loved me when I was a little tiny child. In fact, I thought that God liked me better than he liked everybody else. I just had the feeling that he liked me the best. And it took me a long time to realize that he really loved everyone, not just me. It was kind of devastating for me, actually. My mom and my sisters went to church, but my daddy never went to church. He worked every Sunday. We owned a store that was open from 7 a.m. until 2 a.m., and my daddy worked on Sundays. It was a liquor store. My mama gets really upset when I call it a liquor store. That's why the word newsstand is here. We sold every alcoholic beverage known to man, but we also sold every newspaper and every magazine. So it was called Reed's Newsstand, which is why my mama hangs on the newsstand part of it. We also sold every newspaper, so I had the very best reports in grade school and high school, because everybody else had to depend on local papers or perhaps the Sacramento Bee, and I had the LA Times and the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune, and I had them all because we had access to all those through our store. The store was our life for over 20 years, and it was our home away from home. It took all of us working in it to make it a successful business. So I spent my time after school, my summers working in the store. Just after my 5th birthday, I was pushed off a picnic table by another little girl. We were at a Brownie Scout leaders meeting, and the little girl pushed me off the picnic table. I landed with my leg underneath me. I broke my femur in 3 places, and I was in the hospital for 29 days with my leg in traction. So that was a pretty traumatic part of my life. It was before parents were allowed to stay with you in the hospital. So my mom and daddy could come during visiting hours, which, as I recall, were like 2 to 3:30 in the afternoon and 7 to 8 in the evening. My mama asked if she could come and help bathe me because it was so painful when I was in traction. And they said, no, you may come between 2 and 3 in the afternoon and 7 to 8 in the evening. So, it seems like you don't remember a lot about your life when you're little, but I remember almost every day of those 29 days that I spent in the hospital. I remember seeing an arm open a door and thinking, that isn't anybody I know, because it was a man and he had on a short sleeve shirt. And it was my daddy, and it's the first time I'd ever seen him in a short sleeve shirt. So just the things you remember are really really interesting. I got out of the hospital on July the 3rd. I remember watching the 4th of July fireworks from a lawn chair in the backyard. And just a few weeks after that, while I was still recovering, I woke up one morning and everyone was in my room crying. And I couldn't really figure out why everybody else was crying when I was the one with a broken leg. Because life was always all about me. And it was at that time that I found out that my grandpa had been murdered that night. And this is a picture of my grandpa actually in the liquor store, mom and daddy's liquor store. My grandpa was murdered in it. It was an attempted robbery. They're not sure exactly what happened. No one was ever apprehended. And so it's kind of a part of my formative years that were pretty traumatic. In fact, it changed all of our lives in a way that we dealt with for a lot of years. Not just my daddy had the guilt of having his father killed in his business. My grandparents lived next door to us, and my grandma was a miserable woman, and she was left all alone after that, and she wanted to make sure that the rest of us had a miserable life as well. And so, it really did. It really was impactful in my life. And you're going to see there are kind of themes as you go through here. So I hope you're already seeing it, but the brown part is places I've lived. The blue part has to do with my family, and yellow is church, and purple is trauma. And you'll see I don't have much trauma in my life, but those first 5 years of my life were pretty traumatic. In September, I started kindergarten. I went to a public school, which everybody did when I was growing up. In fact, Bud said, well, what about the Catholic school? Well, actually, there wasn't even a Catholic school there was a Catholic high school where we lived, but there was no parochial school or Christian school in our town when I was growing up. My parents were very supportive. It was a really good school. In fact, my daddy was chairman of the school board. My mother was president of the PTA. She was a Girl Scout Brownie leader. She was a 4-H teacher. They were very involved in our lives. I brought a picture of my daddy handing me my 8th grade diploma since he was on